What's good, everybody? We back at the hype. I put a poll up on what video I should do, and the winner was the best R&B group of all time. This is a video I was nervous about because everybody got their opinion on who their favorite is. Hopefully I don't mess this up, but this is my list. Let's get back to the hype.
Done in a hype.
I narrowed it down to four groups. Four groups I think really embody what an R&B group should be. Some honorable mentions that didn't make the list was New Edition, Boyz II Men, Belle Biv DeVoe, and I'm pretty sure it's a whole bunch of other ones I could have added, but the four I came up with and decided to go with was Jagged Edge, Jodeci, 112, and Dru Hill. Without further ado, let's jump into the first group. For group number one, we're gonna go with Jagged Edge. Years active 1997 to present. At the time when they put out their first album, they had the backing of Jermaine Dupri and So So Def Records. And it's not really a So So Def Records anymore, but at the time, it seemed like a match made in heaven. The first album, A Jagged Era, which had the classic song, I Gotta Be, which really introduced the world to Jagged Edge, and it's one of my favorites from the group. That's an album I really adore, but for me, the best album that they put out was their second one, J.E. A Heartbreak, which went double platinum, had the timeless classics, He Can't Love You, Let's Get Married, Promise, and for me, this was the high point for Jagged Edge. This is their, they reached their peak. And for me, I feel like they peaked a little too quick. This second album was so good, and every album after that really didn't live up to it. Jagged Edge never really put out anything bad. And even after their second album, they had their biggest hit with Where the Party At, off that album Hard that came out in 2003, which also had my favorite Jagged Edge song of all time, Walked Out of Heaven. Jagged Edge holds that special place with me because every time I hear it, it takes me back to that time when you sitting in the car riding home with your parents and Whispers in the Dark come on and you hear I Gotta Be, you hear Promise, and the group has such a great voice, great harmony, great production. It seemed like they were going to be around for a long time, and technically they were and they are. Jagged Edge for me, out of all these groups, has those albums where you can take at least 4 to 6 songs off that album, make it a playlist, and you have a hell of a ride home. And in that playlist, it'll just be those timeless classics that the group just put out so easily, so effortlessly it looked like. And I don't think any other group on this list can do that. I also bet you guys didn't know that last year, 2017, the group put out another album called The Layover, which doesn't really sound like the traditional Jagged Edge, in which it shouldn't, but it's a great album. I was a little scared listening to it, but when I finally heard it, I was like, man, these guys haven't really lost a touch, and they've been able to adapt into how R&B is a little bit today. And if you haven't, go listen to The Layover by Jagged Edge. If you're a fan of Jagged Edge and if you haven't heard any music from them for a long time, you won't be disappointed with The Layover. But that's enough about them. We're going to move on to group number two. Group number two is Jodeci. Years active 1989 to 2015. They might still be active now, but the album they put out in 2015, The Last, The Present, or The Past, The Present, and The Future, felt like the end to me, which I think it should be. Critically and arguably musically, they had the best debut album as far as every group on here, with Forever My Lady selling over 3 million copies in the US. They were adding definitely hip-hop influences mixed with traditional R&B, mixed with the New Jack Swing that was still going at the time, and they really made it cool to be in an R&B group. And that first album had that iconic cover. I'm about to put that up. Look at that iconic cover. Come on, man. Come on. If I could be in any of these groups on the list, it would definitely be Jodeci, so I can wear the baggy pants with the vest on, with no shirt under it, on stage, singing my ass off. You can't go wrong with that. But back to that first album, this album definitely had it all to me. The production just overall was just incredible. Like I said, and me personally, this is my favorite debut album from any group on this list. But most people will say that their second album, Diary of a Mad Band, was their best album. It wasn't commercially the best. It sold about $1.5 million copies in the US, but people love that album, and it has that iconic cover again. I'm gonna put that one up. And that album has my favorite Jodeci song of all time, which is Fiendin', which might be everybody's favorite Jodeci song. But the downfall I feel like Jodeci had is that they only had 3 albums, and then Casey and JoJo went and did their own thing. But for me, easily, this is the most influential group of all time. It might not be the best. We got to get to the end of the video to see that, but they just made it. They just made it cool to be in an R&B group. Now it's time to move on to group number 3 with Dru Hill. Years active, 1992 to present time. The best R&B group of all time is debatable. That's why we're here. But this is definitely my favorite R&B group of all time, which also has my favorite lead singer of all time, Sisqó. Yes, Sisqó is my favorite lead singer of all time. Yellow hair, pink hair and all, that's my guy. Their self-titled Dru Hill album came out in 1996 with their hit single, Tell Me, with the infamous two-step that we all was trying to do in the house when this song came on. Also had hits like Never Make a Promise, In My Bed. This was a great introduction to the world. Some kids from Baltimore came out singing their ass off, and it really showed what type of range this group had. But for me, it really sounded familiar. As a Jodeci fan, their music sounded like Jodeci, which isn't bad, and it makes sense because Sisqó has came out and said he wanted the group to be like Jodeci, and that's his favorite. That was his favorite group, and you can even see how Sisqó is singing with the backgrounds and the, you know, how he over sings sometimes, how they did on Jodeci. But that never took me out of, you know, listen to them. I didn't always think Jodeci. They was able to have those Jodeci influences, but definitely carve their own sound. To me, you can't think about the 90s without thinking Dru Hill. They were everywhere. They were making hit records. They were on movie soundtracks. It was on Rush Hour soundtrack. They was on the Wild Wild West soundtrack, which might not be the best movie, but they were on the soundtrack. The Wild Wild West song really pretty much just helped Sisqó solo career, but damn it, it counts. The group's second album, Enter the Dru, was the group's most successful album and their best album to me. Why does it seem like every group's second album be the best one? It's like a trend. Every one of these groups' second album is, I digress. That album went to sell over 2 million copies in the US, and it seemed like they were here to stay, but they went on a hiatus. Sisqó went and did his solo thing again, and after the disappointing second album he put out, adding Scola to Dru Hill, they came back again. A lot of behind the scenes stuff. They came back in 2010 with Independence Day, and nobody was really checking for it, which is a shame because, like I said, this is my favorite R&B group. When they were clicking on all cylinders, they were just killing the game, and for them to just kind of fall off the face of the earth really was hard for me to watch as a fan of theirs for so long. Last year they came out with a Christmas album, Christmas in Baltimore, which I don't know who wanted a Dru Hill Christmas album. I don't even like Christmas music. Who the hell asked for that? However, I love this group. They had one hell of a run. Last group on the list is 112, years active, 1993 to present time. If Dru Hill to me had the best lead singer, 112 had the most unique lead singer with Slim. The first album, 112, came out in 1996, featuring heavy hitters from their record label Bad Boy like Faith Evans, B.I.G. You know, Diddy found this group and was able to take them in as pretty much their first R&B group on Bad Boy, and he definitely disappointed. Diddy wasn't disappointed in anything at that time. The album featured my favorite song from the group, Cupid, and that's a song I still play on heavy rotation. And they made me have a better appreciation for interludes. The Sexy You interlude, the Why interlude. I wanted those 2 interludes to be full songs so bad. Their second album, Room 112, has a lot of people's favorite 112 song with Anywhere, which again, we probably shouldn't be listening to that at that age, but it was sexy, and we was trying to get sexy in 96. But other than that, that's really it as far as highlights from this group. This was a group I feel never found their sweet spot how these other groups on this list did, and I don't know why. They had the talent, they had the potential, they had the music, they had the voices, but for me they didn't peak. They definitely should have been a lot bigger than what they ended out to be. Last year they put out an album called Q Mike Slim Duran, I think his name, which was the group's first album in 12 years. The last album before that was in 2005 with the song You Already Know, which I like. I think all of us like that song. But this album they put out last year was great. I liked it. Like I said, it doesn't sound like traditional 112, but it's a nice album. And for me, I was missing, the music from this group. And when I listened to this album, I was worried about it, but it turned out to be great. So if you haven't, go listen to that album that came out last year. If you're a fan of 112, you'll be a fan of this. That is it. It's hard for me to pick a winner. But if I had to give it to any of these groups, as far as the best R&B male group of all time, it would have to be it's gonna get controversial, but for me, this group had it all, man. It was a tie between Jodeci and Dru Hill, who I was leaning towards, but Dru Hill just those guys. This is a group I feel like when they were peaking, they could do no wrong. This is a group I feel like is gonna stand the test of time. This is a group that no matter where you at, no matter if it's 10 years from now, if you at a wedding or if you at a barbecue, some Dru Hill's gonna get put in the playlist. And I know this might not be the popular choice, but it's mine's. You know the motto, fight me in the comments. I'm gonna see if I can add that in the intro, the hype intro. I was gonna say the hype, fight me in the comments. But I'm open for, my mind being changed. You ask me tomorrow, it might be Jodeci. You ask me the next day, it might be 112. The day after that, it might be Jackie. That's for today is Dru Hill, is my favorite and the best R&B group of all time. Get into the comments. Let's talk about it. If you think it's some people that's left off this list, we can talk about it also. But I want to thank y'all so much for watching the hype. Come back next time if you want me to do another best something of all time. I'm with that. I had to put a lot of research into this, but it was fun. So like, share, thumbs up. Ask your mama if she like Dru Hill. Play her some Dru Hill. If she don't know who Dru Hill is, you gotta ask her. Like, come on now, you serious? I'll see y'all next time.